let's dive into I'm really excited to hear from our speakers today. We're going to be talking about product launch, iteration. Each of you has your own perspective on that, your own story on it. Vinay Gidwaney is from DailyFeats, and he'll tell you a little bit about that. But like he previewed this morning, it's not so much describing the product, or nobody up here is doing product pitches. It's more about how to, let's learn how to do baby steps together, and he'll be sharing some of that. Vinay, come on up. Please welcome Vinay.
Thanks, BJ. I'm going to do a little bit of walking around. Can we get this one on? Test. Oh, perfect. OK. Thanks, everybody. My name is Vinay Gidwaney. BJ just mentioned I'm from a company called DailyFeats. And today we're going to talk about product iterations and designing products to solve some of the most challenging and divisive questions that often come up during building technology for behavior change. And just give you a little bit of preview, we're going to be trying to understand whether intrinsic or extrinsic rewards work to try to get people to do healthy actions. Everybody was showing pictures of babies, and I'm sure you might be sick of this, but I had to put this in there. This is my little baby, Leela. She walked for the first time, did her baby steps on grass on Mother's Day, so I thought I wanted to share that. She's wonderful. Aww. And wouldn't we all like to feel like that? Seriously, right now? She's wonderful. Before I get into actually designing a product, and we're going to do that right now, I want to talk a little bit about DailyFeats. At DailyFeats, we believe in making positive actions part of everyday life. We actually also believe that you can empower brands and companies and corporations and even the nation's largest health plans to make positive change happen in everyday life through incentives and rewards. At dailyfeats.com, you can check in whenever you do a positive action. You can see a lot of these right here. You break down your largest, hardest goals that you have into small steps. We call those actions feats. You can check in those feats. You earn points for those. And we engage you in a process of both intrinsic and extrinsic incentives and rewards. So everything from making you feel really good about getting things done every day, to celebration, to helping you save money, to giving you social support from friends and family. We use all of those methodologies to essentially drive behavior change in an individual's life. But not only is baby steps important to our product development cycle and how we think about behavior change, baby steps is important to our members. They make change in their life by doing small actions every day. And we learn a tremendous amount of information through the millions and millions of check-ins that we have of people saying how they achieve their goals by taking one step at a time. Now, when we sat down and started designing this product, we really tried to figure out the right way to do this. And you've heard this several times this morning from other speakers, that you have to be able to fail fast. You have to be able to iterate really quickly. So I'm not going to spend too much time going through a lot of that, but one thing I wanted to mention that I think wasn't mentioned this morning is that you have to be willing to throw away your work. And one of the first things that I ask a developer during the hiring process is, when's the last time you built something? You put a week of effort into it. You put your heart and soul. Coding for developers is really important to them. They did that, and then in the first 10 minutes of it being out there, they threw it out. They said that was garbage and started again. And often I ask the question, would you be willing to do that every single day? And that's what it takes to design a product that is going to change the world. You need to be able to fail fast and be willing to focus on what success really means, which is not writing code and putting product out the door. It means that you're changing people's lives, you're engaging people. And so we're going to do that today. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and I have to ask everybody to try to participate. It's going to be very much an audience participation. I'm going to ask my lovely redheaded assistant, Morley. He's right there. And he's going to be taking some notes, because this is going to require all of us to vote, and I need to track the votes. So we're going to do a simple A/B test of things. So you heard a lot from everybody about the importance of simplification, the importance of quick testing. And if you've been confused on how do I translate that into what I do every day, hopefully this will help you understand that it's really easy to do that. And we're going to do it with very, very little coding. So every choice that we have is an A or B choice. We're going to drive traffic to this site using Google AdWords. It's not the best way to do it, but for the purpose of this talk, we're going to do it that way. We're going to measure everything. And so tomorrow I'm going to show the results. I'm going to use some tools that we have off the shelf, like Kissmetrics and Google Analytics and Crazy Egg, to really understand what people do. And we're going to take it even a step further. We're going to use a tool called usertesting.com, and we're actually going to ask people to record their screens and tell us verbally. You're going to hear people's voices about what they think when they interact with their screens. And so this is scary for designers, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to send it off and we'll just watch some numbers. No, you're going to send it off, and you're going to hear somebody say, this is really stupid, I don't know what I'm doing here. And you're going to have to respond to that and improve your product. And so we're going to do a little bit of that. So let's talk about the premise. Everybody knows that stretching is important. Stretching is good for your posture. Stretching before working out, after working out, stretching when you wake up. Stretching is really good. People don't stretch enough. So we're going to design a web experience that helps somebody stretch. Now, keep in mind the goal. The goal is really important. The goal of the web experience is to get somebody at the end of this to sign up to a daily newsletter that they'll get every day in their inbox that will tell them to stretch. And we'll talk about a little bit later what that means. And so this is really important to keep in mind, because it's going to influence some of the decisions that you make through the process. So you can see some of the AdWords. I've got my team back in Boston ready to go. They've set up all the Google AdWords and the keywords, and you can see some of the examples. So when somebody types in stretch in Google, they're going to get one of these ads on the right side, and we're going to ask them to try to click on those and take them through a flow. Now, the next choice is the most important choice you'll make today. It's the one that's going to drive whether this is going to work or not. And it's the choice that you probably, if you've designed products, unfortunately spent too much time trying to figure out, which is it blue buttons or is it green buttons? Everybody's been in this debate if you've designed products. Somebody's going to stand up in the room and say, green, it means go. People will click it if it's there. You know what? Typical answer to that is, let's just try both. Let's see what happens. We'd like to try both, but I'm just going to choose green right now, so don't worry about that. We're going to go into some more important decisions, but every button you'll see will be green. Maybe later we can do the blue one and see if it actually makes a difference. But let's look at our first choice. Now, I know that you can believe in both of these things, and clearly it's a combined approach that makes change happen for people, giving them both the intrinsic rewards or the potential of developing an intrinsic reward within themselves, and then extrinsic rewards that you can get to give to them because they did something. But I'm going to ask all of you right now, just mentally in your mind, and we'll vote in a minute, to decide whether you're interested in an intrinsic reward flow or an extrinsic reward flow. And just to be really clear, intrinsic is the personal satisfaction that you get out of stretching in this case. What it means to you, maybe it's making you feel better, maybe it's making your back feel less hurtful or something like that. It's the intrinsic motivation behind it. Extrinsic motivations means we're going to give you money to do it. We're going to give you points, we're going to give you a reward, we're going to give you something to do this action. And when you do this action, we're going to give that to you right away. So try to choose which one in your head, and we'll come back in a second. So here are the screens. Stretch right now and get a reward. Try this now. Stretching is transformative for your mind and body, and it takes just minutes to do. You can unlock a real-life reward. This is the extrinsic option. The intrinsic option, stretch right now and make a difference. Stretching is transformative. We're helping people stretch more often to boost your health. Try it now. So choice number one, A or B, stretch for a reward or stretch for making a difference. And we're actually going to run both the flows, but I want to get an idea who votes for A as a way to get people to stretch. Hands up. Okay, interesting. And B? Intrinsic, wow. Okay, so intrinsic I think wins, but not by a huge margin. As I said, we're going to run both flows, and we'll come back and take a look what attracts more people. Okay, second question to ask. So this is, again, keep in mind at the end of these screens, there are 4 screens. At the end of the screens, we're going to ask them to enter in their email address. So the second screen we ask is, tell us, did you stretch or not? And tell us how you stretched. And so there's 2 types of input. There's the meaningful input, we call it. Tell us how you stretched, type it out. We're going to have an open field here, so people can type in whatever they'd like. Or we're just going to say easy input. Just click the button, I stretched. Now, why 2 of these differences? We think that getting people to write it out may help them internalize the value of what they just did. But they may not do it. They may look at an open field and say, goodbye, and close their browser or go off to Facebook or something. or they're going to have a really easy option, and you're just going to get them to click, 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 and go through quickly. So there's some advantage to having the easy option. So again, let's vote. This time, we're going to choose one or the other. So we're actually going to put this one in place and throw out the other one. So A, the meaningful input. Let's see, hands up. Wow. Jeez. OK. B, the easy input. OK. I might actually run both and see who's right here. Interesting. OK, third choice. Third choice is we're going to ask for your email address. This time, we're going to ask you in 2 different ways. Give us your email address, and we'll let you check in that you stretched every day for points. And we're not going to necessarily talk about rewards. So if we're going to run both flows, the rewards one have like a little gift card on there. The intrinsic one is a little bit different. But either way, though, we're going to say do it for points or do it for help. So I need help every day. So I'm going to give you an idea of what the different screens look like. The left one is the extrinsic one for the reward. The right side is intrinsic. So A or B. So A says we want to earn points for stretching again tomorrow? Enter your email for a free daily reminder. B is want to stretch again tomorrow? Enter your email to get a reminder with tips. So who believes in the points option? OK. And B, the daily tips? OK, it's about even. So we might run both of those. Let's see what happens. OK. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take somebody through those flows. And tomorrow, I'm going to come back. We're actually going to run this overnight. Hopefully, we'll get, we're trying to get about 100 responses. And we'll show you some of the results. So now we sit and wait patiently for what happens. Everybody is a product designer now, so congratulations. Whether you're a good designer or not, we're going to see tomorrow. Thank you.
Are you intrigued? What will happen? We'll hear from Vinay tomorrow. How many people here are currently students, full-time students? Yay, I love seeing those hands. Thanks to McKesson, we were able to help about 40 students come to this event at a very, very reduced rate, which is great. And that's important to me as an educator. It should be important to all of us as health innovators to get the young people going in the right direction. Cristina Cordova was a student of mine here at Stanford, and she did awesome work. And so I'm actually not surprised she's in this position. She heads up business development for a company called Pulse, which is a newsreader, which has, wow, I'll let you share how many millions of users. What's interesting is she, on the business development side, has partnered with over 250 companies, which is pretty amazing. Now, I didn't train you to do that. So somehow, I mean, you're an amazing person. You always impress me. Cristina, talk to us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cristina Cordova. And as BJ said, I lead business development at Pulse. Pulse is a mobile news reading application. So if you want to read Fast Company, if you want to read Facebook, Twitter, the Washington Post, you can kind of get all of those different news providers all in one place. So no matter what you're looking for, if it's OK Magazine, like celebrity gossip, or if it's real hardcore news, you can combine all of those sources into one app. So we make it a really customizable and consumable application. So one thing I want to kind of discuss before we kind of get into the thick of things is about bringing structure to an unstructured environment. With startups, nobody knows what they're doing. You know, we put this app out there called Pulse, and nobody knew if anyone would like it, if it would stick with anybody. And I think with a lot of you out there, when you're innovating in new industries, it hasn't been done before, so there's no right way to do it. But it's your job to really bring the structure to what is an inherently unstructured environment. And that's kind of going to be what I'm going to show you a little bit today, bringing tweaks and little kind of fixes to really push a product forward. So most of you have kind of started with the launch of some kind in the history of working with products or with people. The launch of Pulse kind of differed a little bit in the sense that we launched an app out there, and then Steve Jobs at the Worldwide Developers Conference basically featured the app, and we were then shot to #1 in the App Store, and it was this great story. But that's not actually how it happened. I told our founders that I was going to show this next screenshot, and they said, "Oh, do you have to?" And this is really what Pulse looked like when we started. And it was kind of heinous looking, I'll admit. I really hate looking at it. If you ask our designer, he'll say he kind of wants to like scratch his eyes out whenever he looks at it. So it has these kind of white bars and this like strange gray thing. So that's kind of where we started, and we just kind of didn't really think about the interface too much. We were just trying to focus on the experience. Were people interested in this? We didn't really care too much how it looked because we knew we could fix that later. So we pushed this out into the store, and we found that users really did like it, but that they didn't really like the design, and that needed quite a bit of fixing. So we decided to start rapid prototyping this product. So we got a designer and asked him to help us for a day. To clean up the app just a little bit. And this is kind of the rapid prototyping that a lot of folks out here are discussing. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It can be really quick. So 24 hours later, this is kind of what we came out with. So if you're a big sports fan, this would be your sports page on Pulse with ESPN, Bleacher Report, et cetera. And this was a much cleaner application and really allowed us to show off the news and show off the content. And now if you look at Pulse today, this is kind of what you'll see. Something that's even cleaner and kind of more design oriented. So when folks come up to me and they say, "Hey, you guys have this really great design and I really like it," I kind of laugh because when we started, it certainly wasn't like that and we didn't really know what we were doing. But as long as you kind of make these tweaks along the way, that can help. So one of the big focal points for us was really working on iteration and trying to move a product through different phases. So one of those was sharing. Sharing on Pulse, if you read a news story from anywhere, you may share that to Twitter or Facebook, and for us, that's a really good thing. One, it spreads our brand. Other people know that you're using Pulse. Two, for publishers that give us content, they really want other people to be clicking on those links and then going to their news sites. So for me to do my job, business development, and get them to give us their content for free, essentially, we need to increase sharing. So for both of these reasons, we essentially created this little pop-up that allows a user to post something to Twitter or post something to Facebook. And that worked, pretty well, but we wanted to make it even better. So we decided to put that same bar on the side. And we thought, oh, well, this would be in the face of the users quite a bit more, and users would like it there. And then a mutiny kind of ensued, and all of our users started emailing us saying, "Why did you do that? That was terrible." So here are a few snippets of that. A user here at the top saying, let's see, "Put them back where they were, on the bottom." Another user, "Yeah, that pisses me off too." "Agreed, this toolbar is killing me." And then the same user again saying, "No, seriously, this feature is really annoying." So these are our users basically telling us that we did not make the right decision with this one. So we emailed Apple, and in 24 hours, we got a new app that kind of fixed it back to the way that it was. And this kind of comes upon our first lesson, which is really listen to your users, listen to what they tell you, and hopefully you're not releasing something that hasn't really been tested with your hardcore users before. In this case, it was really early, and we certainly did it, and we learned from that mistake. So we moved it back to this version, but we still really needed to increase the rates of sharing. So we came out with this new version, which in 2 taps allows you to share a story directly to Facebook or Twitter. So this was kind of the simplicity part. You didn't have to go through various different user flows. You just tapped on one button, and this was sent to wherever you wanted it to go. So we take this and we try to review it. And really that makes us focus on analytics and data. And for mobile, it's actually really hard to do something like A/B testing. You have to build an A/B testing framework and then release it across all of your devices. And if you're doing that for Android and iPhone and iPad and you have to wait 3 weeks until your app gets approved, it can be really tedious. But in this case, it was pretty obvious. People were sharing a lot more after this update. And so that really tells you to look at the data and see what can really be improved and how your updates do that. So we tried to, look at this again and see what else we could do. So here's what you would see if you shared on Pulse for iPad today. And this kind of did two things when we made this change. You could share to Twitter and Facebook in one step instead of doing it twice on each network. So this made sharing increase. If you were sharing it to Twitter, then you'd be more likely to also share it to Facebook or vice versa. But in general, because this pop-up kind of came up and covered the screen, users were sharing less. So the next lesson is really kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The other way was a lot cleaner, a lot more simple, and it's going to be something we'll be switching back to in our future version. So one task, I think, is when you put out a product and it doesn't really work. And a lot of people say that you learn a lot from failure, but I really think that the only thing you learn from failure is that the exact path that you took somewhere wasn't working. So you have to kind of take a step back and figure out where along that path did you kind of diverge, and how can you fix it? So what's working and what's not working, really. So rather than kind of stopping everything you do and kind of scrapping a product and then saying, okay, well, we'll work on something else, really try to figure that out. So here's one example of that. We basically released this feature that allowed people to start their own Pulse. And here was the sign-up flow. Asked you to put your name, username, email. And it's not really clear what signing up for your own Pulse really means, and what value this really drives to you as a user if this isn't mandatory to sign up for the app. So this didn't really work so well, as you can imagine. And after, if the 5% of users that actually went through that user flow having no reason to do so, once they did that, we told them you can find your Pulse online, and then we left this lovely little quote here that says, what is a meme? A meme is an idea or concept that spreads quickly via imitation. I have no idea what that means or why we put it there. So that's something that doesn't really make it clear for the user. What is this product? What is this service? Yes, you're telling me where you got the idea for this name, but that's not really telling me, why this product exists and why I should use it. So we decided, again, that this was bad. But there was something working. And when we looked at the data, we found that users really loved it. So the users that went through the process really used this feature. They were saving stories and kind of curating their own streams for Pulse, and that was good. The problem was that there just weren't enough users who were willing to do that. So we decided to essentially revamp this stream and really make the value proposition a lot more clear. So at the top, you'll see create an account, and here's what it does. It allows you to save stories to read later, wherever you are. It allows you to send stories to bookmarking services. I don't know if you guys use Evernote or Instapaper or Read It Later. You can send stories there. And then you can also sync stories and sources across various different devices. And then we left it to a simple sign up. So you sign up, you log in, or you can Facebook Connect. And we looked at the results, and this increased our new downloads. So users who at one point had Pulse for iPhone but wanted to also get Pulse for Android but didn't have any idea that we were even on Android, now they knew that they could get on there and could sync all of their sources, and it would be really simple. This also increased usage across different devices. So if you are waking up in the morning and using Pulse on your iPhone, later in the day, let's say you're on the bus and you have your iPad, you can essentially pick up right where you left off. So that was increasing our usage across devices. And then when users were saving stories to read later, let's say you woke up in the morning and there was this really long form article from the New Yorker, but you didn't have time to read it. And later, let's say you saved that story, you would spend 15 minutes on Pulse reading that story, and that's one user session. So we increased time per session as well. And the main lesson from these kind of examples is that you should really kind of prototype everything that you have to do but not only just put a bunch of products out there, really review what's working and what's not working. And when you look at the data behind that and the results that you see with either, qualitative or quantitative user feedback, you can really take that and refine your product as you go along. So thank you.
Rahim, why don't you come here and let me ask Vinay and Cristina a question, kind of an interim question. Both of you guys are talking pretty fluidly about mistakes and dealing with mistakes, or some judgments about design. How within your company do you talk about missteps? Do you say, oh, it was his idea or her idea, or do you have a culture of, well, we tried, it didn't work? How do you deal with that?
I usually own all the problems and say it was my fault.
Seriously? Seriously?
Yeah, we sit down almost several times a week. We do a scrum and we go look at numbers on the screen and usually say, it's failing there. We don't point any blame, but I really take it a point to say, I made that decision. That one was really dumb. Wow. Let's go back and try something else.
And what do your teammates say? It was your fault?
No, we have a very open culture where failure is very much appreciated. So we do a lot to make sure that you feel very comfortable to fail. As long as you're learning, then you're winning.
Cristina, you were on board with Pulse since week 4 of the launch, right? Or something like that, employee number 1. In fact, you were in my class when you joined up with Pulse, but you still did great in the class. How do you guys talk about, wow, we made the wrong decision, or wow, I want to scratch my eyes out, whose fault was that, kind of thing?
So everyone in the company is kind of very open to feedback. And I think that really started off with kind of the D school at Stanford and everyone talking about how everyone has a part in this process. So everyone on our team, whether you're a business person or you're an engineer, you're constantly giving product feedback. You're trying out these prototypes and you're saying, oh, this isn't working, or this doesn't look as good as something else does. And when everybody kind of is responsible for giving this feedback, then I think when you do fail and something does happen, then it's everyone's fault because you all had a hand in it.
Okay, let me push you a little further on that. Do you have a meeting where people say it's not working, or is it email, or is it water cooler conversation? What I want to do is for people who haven't designed in this kind of way and this kind of environment, how do you have that conversation?
I think the first step is, within the first week that you launch something, take a look at the data. So are people sharing more?
Is it in a meeting where it's we're going to sit down and look at it together?
So it's one person who pulls the data. I pull the data on any feature that I'm interested in, right? And I think that's with any team. If you built this feature, you look at the data after you launch it. And then once you look at that data, then you share it with the rest of the team. And that's something that the whole team should know.
Through an email? Here's what I found?
No, we have a team meeting twice a week where everybody meets, you talk about what you did for that week, and it can be, I reviewed this new feature that we launched, and here's what's working and here's what's not working.
Nice. Okay, good. Manu and Rahim, you may have an answer to that. We'll do that after you give your little talk. Rahim Fazal, who is founder of Involver, which is a super interesting company, and we've been crossing paths for a few years through my classes and mutual friends, and I'm really happy to have you on the mobile health stage. Please welcome Rahim.
Thank you, guys. All right. So it's worth saying that I completely underestimated what this conference was going to be about. I wore this tweed jacket and my nice sweater and walked in and saw beach balls being thrown around and someone in a Hawaiian shirt up front. So this is an incredible surprise to me, and I'm really excited about some of the topics that we're talking about today. The topic that's most exciting to me is user acquisition. It's the thing that I think about every single minute of the day, and what I want to share with you today are the 3 biggest lessons that I've learned about user acquisition. So before I begin, I'd love to get a sense of how many people here in the room are responsible in some way for user acquisition, by a show of hands. Okay. And how many of you guys who raised your hands have launched a product or service only to find that nobody really gave a crap about it? Yes, this is where my entrepreneurial story begins. So when we started Involver, the idea was to help brands build rich marketing presences on places like Facebook. And we launched several different products and found that no one wanted to use any of them, which made no sense because it was Facebook and everyone was talking about Facebook, but we couldn't get any customers to use it whatsoever. And I tried to think about, what are the barriers that are preventing people from actually using the product? And I came across a few things that I wanted to share with you and kind of give you a bit of backstory on what I learned. And I'll be incredibly practical, and I'll try to keep it to just these three because they're the most important things that we came away with. So this is what the Involver footprint looks like today after these lessons. We couldn't get any customers to use it whatsoever. Today we grow at about 1,500 companies a day. We have about 2 billion fans on Facebook that interact with the applications in over 10% of all companies. And the way we achieved this was really through three things that I want to talk about. So the first thing is we learned how to build better on-ramps than California highways, okay? Now, when you think about a highway, particularly in California, when you're entering the highway, you end up having to slow down if there are cars that are waiting to get onto the highway. Oftentimes, especially in California, there are large potholes and other roadblocks that end up preventing you getting on as fast as possible. And in product, and what we found with our company, Involver, this was one of the biggest opportunities for us to unclear. And let me give you a little bit more color on this. So our customers are folks like yourself, folks who have marketing responsibilities at an organization, folks who were interested in social media, but not necessarily ones who had spent any money on it before or were even active users of it. And what we had to do was take this incredible product that we had built and figure out how to get it into the hands of as many people as possible with as little friction as we possibly could find. And so we started to talk to customers, and one of the biggest things we learned was that the marketers that we were selling to in these organizations always had to go back to IT in order to get the marketing buying decision approved and implemented. And this ended up becoming a huge roadblock. It is the pothole of the California on-ramp system. And so what we did was we took our product and we took an extension, we made a version of it available for free. And what it allowed people to do, the folks who were interested and the champions in the organization who otherwise had roadblocks to adopting the software, we allowed them to come to our website, pick and choose one of our marketing applications, and install it on their Facebook fan page or their website without talking to anybody. And we did it in such a way where we could demonstrate real value to them in just a few minutes with very little effort. The second thing that we did was we realized that the only way to generate real demand was to co-create with our customers. Does anybody do this today? Does anybody co-create? Fantastic. It was, I expect that the next time we have this conference that like everybody in the audience will put their hands up because it's such a phenomenal tactic that I learned. So once we had people coming to the site and installing these applications, we were then interested in how do we convert these people into actual paying customers. And so what we did was we began polling our customers pretty regularly to understand what was the next type of application they were looking for. Now, I think of myself as a marketer, but I've never worked in a real marketing organization before, and I couldn't really appreciate all the different types of marketing campaigns that a brand might want to run. And so what we did was we just picked the first few. We offered them self-serve to create the on-ramp. And once people started to come in, we developed a direct relationship with our end customers and started to survey them on a weekly basis. And week over week, we would give them different options about what they might be interested in buying from us next. And it started with things like video galleries, it went to quizzes, it went to contests. And over time, we were able to use the input that we got from our customers to actually build out our product roadmap. And we actually do this today. While we started with just 4 applications, today we have over 30 applications. And the benefit is that because we know which customers are interested in taking these applications from us, we also then know how to prioritize them in the roadmap. We know, what we should price them at, and ultimately, we've been able to grow a pretty significant revenue business through involving these customers in the process. And the third one is land and expand, and this is very much about sort of the baby steps of distribution. So we found that our customers didn't really have a budget for social media at the time. They were interested in it. They got onto the on-ramp. They started using the applications. They started to expand and tell us what they wanted to see. But they weren't really willing to pay very much to begin with. And so what we did was we realized that the best thing to do in order to overcome their obstacle was actually show them, give them reports on a regular basis that would show how these applications are performing. And what it ultimately allowed people to do was that marketing manager that no one listened to in the organization was able to go to their boss, the CMO, who actually controlled the budget and actually could make the decisions about purchasing. And they could look really good in front of them by showing them these reports. And so we found if we could take the champion, the user that used our applications, and make them look incredibly great, we could overcome that barrier. And while someone might join at just $100 or $500 a month, those accounts have eventually grown into 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 every month. So again, the three best things that I've learned about acquisition, so for all of those people who are responsible for this on a daily basis, the first thing is learn the lessons from the California highway system and build incredible on-ramps. The second one is generate demand by co-creating with your customers and having them tell you what they want to see next, so they have a vested interest. And the third one is, even if you start small, remember the real opportunity is to expand the business. So listen to your customers, open the door, give them what they want, and you'll be able to break through. Thank you, guys.
Our last speaker of this session is Manu Kumar. And Manu did graduate work here at Stanford, where we were able to work together some. And he was always kind of mysterious to me, because we were teaching this class, I had to do with persuasive technology. I knew you had started and sold a company, but you never talked about it. So it's like, what's up with this? And at the same time, you were also running another company. So he has this kind of quiet, understated amazingness about him. Now he runs K9 Ventures, which is basically a venture firm. And I wanted to bring him to the stage to talk about the theme of this session. So please welcome Manu Kumar.
Thanks, BJ. So before I start, I would love to get a show of hands of how many people here are actually trying to do a startup in the mobile health space or in the mobile space. Oh, excellent. OK. So you've heard from 3 different companies that are talking about products and iterations and about launching products and acquiring users. And what I spend a lot of my time doing is actually thinking about, at a slightly meta level, about how do you actually create a company and what do you actually need to do in order to create a successful company. So what I'm going to start with, if you can switch over to the slides now, is basically I'm going to talk about success and about company success. And in fact, what I'm really going to be talking to you about is the myth of overnight success. Right? There's this misconception, and it's a fairly common misconception, that certain companies and certain people and certain ideas just happen to succeed overnight. Right? And it's almost all of us have had this type of thought of like, oh, that guy or that company just happened to get lucky. Right? And I'm going to throw up a couple of logos on here, and I want to see how many people actually have that reaction. Right? And these are all companies that you've probably heard of, regardless of whether you're in the web space or not. These are all now consumer companies that have gotten a lot of attention. And almost, at least one of these must have made you think that, oh, they got lucky. Okay. And is that true or not? Can I get a show of hands for how many people think that they actually got lucky? Wow, fewer than I was expecting. Okay, good. So what I was going to talk about is basic success leads to the creation of a revisionist history, right? That once somebody is successful, they kind of seem to forget the path that they actually took to get there, or at least they don't like to dwell upon their mistakes. Founders are definitely part of the ones to blame, where once they are actually successful, they don't want to think about all the things they did wrong. But the people who really hammer this home are the press, right? Because the press loves a good story. They love showing you a story that, oh, this company just started, and today it's already hugely successful, right? That's the kind of type of story that the press actually likes to get out. The reality is very different. And the reality is that here's what people think the path to success looks like. And how many of you have actually seen the other part of this picture? Okay, well, that's fewer than I was expecting. Here's what success actually looks like. Okay? And it's a lot of different paths. You kind of meander. You go from one side to the other side. You make mistakes. You go backwards. You go forwards. But the goal is that you're ultimately trending in the right direction, right? And at some point, you figure out what that is going to be, and that's when things really start to take off. There's a great article that was actually published in the New York Times. I put an excerpt of this down at the bottom. I don't expect you to actually read the whole piece down here. But it was actually John Chambers, who is the CEO of Cisco, who was talking about what he learned from Jack Welch, the CEO of GE. And one of the comments that Jack Welch made to John Chambers was that every company must have a near-death moment and a near-death experience, right? And in all the companies that I have ever been involved with to date, which is now over 20, 25 companies, I have actually experienced that firsthand. That every company, regardless of whether it becomes successful or whether it fails, it always has had several near-death moments. Okay. Biz Stone, who's the founder of Twitter, actually wrote this on his blog. That timing, perseverance, and 10 years of trying will eventually make you look like an overnight success. Okay. It's funny that when we sit down at a piano, we don't really expect to be knocking out Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 as soon as we sit down, right? When you jump into the pool, you don't expect to be competing with Michael Phelps. But when you launch a product or when you launch a company, that's kind of what we all expect and what we all want. Right? And what we're missing is what Malcolm Gladwell basically talked about in his book as the 10,000-hour rule, right? That the key to success in any field, to a large extent, is a matter of practicing for a total of around 10,000 hours, right? Most startups go through this type of a cycle as well, right? And startups are not going through that cycle as an individual, they're going through that as a group, and that makes it even that much more complicated. I'm sure several of you here are already aware of the Stanford experiment around delayed gratification, but somehow we still expect overnight success. So I'm now going to switch over to talking about what works, and you'll actually find themes in here which are very similar to what you've heard from other people today as well. And I'm actually going to go back to the first time that I ever heard of this, which was, it was a paper published by Barry Beam, published in the Software Engineering Journal, where he described the spiral model for software development. Okay. And this was published in 1986, which if you think about computing and the time of when software, it was still very early in that phase. And he basically, I picked kind of the simplest diagram that I could of what he talks about, where there's basically 4 phases to doing anything, which is analysis, so analyze, design, build, and test, and repeat. And the key part about the spiral model is that at every single iteration that you make, you're making an incremental improvement in the right direction. Right? Let's talk about analyzing. When you're analyzing things, you're not just analyzing the market, which is what most people would think about. You're analyzing the problem itself. Are you solving the right problem? You're analyzing users. You're analyzing the business model. You're analyzing the revenue model. You're analyzing what the product is actually going to be. Right? And in fact, my training for my master's was actually in software engineering, and one of the things that they stressed was the amount of time you spend planning when you're writing software and when you're building a product needs to be an order of magnitude higher than the amount of time you actually spend building it. Right? Let's talk a little bit about design. And so I'm actually going to ask you guys to define what is design. So please just shout out different definitions of design. Anyone? Concepts, okay. Others? Sorry? User interface, okay. Others? What else is, what is design? Imagination on paper. Okay. I'm going to cheat, and I'm actually going to call up the dictionary definition of design. Right? And the dictionary definition of design is to create, fashion, execute, or construct according to plan. And there's a longer definition of design as well. But essentially, I'm going to take a step back from this and basically say that design is anything that has been thought about or considered that has been designed. If you think about something, you've designed it. Right? And the chair that you're sitting on, somebody designed that chair. The pen that you're holding, somebody designed that pen. Right? So every single product, every single experience always goes through the process of design. And the things that we commonly think about when it comes to design is visual design, product design, interaction design. The three things that we don't think about is actually designing the idea that we are working on. Right? What's the concept? How do you actually analyze and design that? How do you actually analyze and design the team and the culture? Do you have the right team in place to actually build the product that you're trying to build? Right? And that's a key part of what I do in terms of looking at investing in companies, is because one of the first things I look at is this team going to be able to build their product? And then another part that needs to be designed is the revenue model. How is your product actually going to make money? Have you at least thought about it? You may not have the right answer right on day one, but you should have at least 3 possible ways in which your product is actually going to make revenue. Building is by far the easy part. Building is essentially executing on a certain scope and on a certain timeline. The creative part actually happens in the analysis and the design phase, and the building part is where you just need to get it done. Right? And there's different skill sets that apply in different phases of this life cycle. Test, does it work? Why or why not? Can it be improved? And all testing does is basically give us the data that we can then take to go back into the analysis phase. Okay. And coming back to kind of the theme of today, what these are essentially how you would apply baby steps. Right? Each iteration is basically a baby step. And what I'm trying to get to here is that you even take the baby step and you break that down into 4 pieces. Right? You first analyze, you then design, then you build, and then you test for every single step, and you iterate. I'm going to end with an anecdote and story about when I was starting my first company, and at least thinking about starting my first company. And so when I was starting my first company, I decided I wanted to go and take a class on entrepreneurship. The class was already oversubscribed, and the professor basically told me, there's no way you can get into this class. And I decided that I was going to show up on the first day of class anyway. So I showed up on the first day of class, and I just kind of like hung around close to the door, hoping he wouldn't kick me out. And the first slide that he put up on that day was this, the definition of entrepreneurship. Right? And this professor of mine, Jack Thorne, who passed away a few years ago, he defined entrepreneurship as insane perseverance in the face of complete resistance. Okay. And that statement is truly, to me, the correct definition of entrepreneurship. And it provides sometimes it's the only thing you have left to hang on to when you're actually trying to build a company and build a product. Right? So with that, I'll end here and be happy to take any questions after the session. Thank you.
All right, thank you, speakers. I have some hard questions for you guys. I liked your talks. I think you all contributed interesting insights to us, but I don't think we yet have answered some of the key questions that I'm guessing the audience has. So key up some all these people can handle hard questions, right? So raise your hand, get the mics, and the people with the mics be a little more visible when I look at the audience. So I'm going to start with some, and this is a yes/no answer. Can you think of any venture, any company, any product, any solution that has been slow to launch and slow to iterate that has actually succeeded in the last 5 years?
I think you've trained me to say no to that one.
No, you don't have to do what I trained you. I mean, really, seriously. I mean, I say that in talks and stuff, and nobody says, no, Vijay, you're wrong. Here's why. So can you think of anybody that has launched, oh, we're going to plan for 18 months, and we're going to just launch it, and then we're going to not iterate it? I mean, so we've talked about this pattern. Has anybody breaking that mold and winning?
Because we're just about to buy a Kinect at home, I actually think Xbox went through that. I think Xbox went through that.
Okay.
It didn't iterate a lot at the beginning. It's gone through 3 cycles, hugely successful.
Okay. Cristina?
I think in a lot of cases you don't know because people will write about the overnight successes, but I think like maybe iTunes is something that comes to mind. I don't know how long that took, but I feel like it probably took a while.
Feels like it took a while, that's for sure. Rahim?
Just because it's one that we all talk about a lot, just social networks in general, and in particular Facebook, which was around for some time, but didn't really hit that escape velocity until several years into the business.
Interesting. Manu?
Facebook was actually founded in 2003.
Right.
Exactly. So
almost 10 years old now.
Yeah. I actually have a hard time answering that because all the stuff that I'm looking at is always iterating very, very quickly. I will give examples of some products that I think did really well early on, but then have been either failing to improve or have been improving in the wrong direction. So they're actually getting worse. The number one product I would pick for that is actually Gmail. I get very frustrated by Gmail. In 2004, it was brilliant, but in 2012, it's just frustrating to me.
Okay. Next question. It seems clear, so I asked for the exception, and there might be some, but it's not the general pattern of how to win today in creating product and health products. I don't think so. What is stopping companies from launching fast, iterating fast, doing that whole way of thinking? Manu, we'll start with you and go this way. So if this is clearly the winning pattern, and I think it is, and you may disagree with me, why don't companies look at that? There's a pattern. Let's stop doing the failing thing. Let's do the winning thing. Yet people, so I do like 60 phone calls a month with people that call me for 15 minutes, and I just try to help them, and I hang up, and it's over. Relationship's over at that point. But I'm just trying to help people, and I just hear it over and over, and I'm just like, stop thinking and launch and learn. You don't learn anything until you actually get out there. What's stopping people, in your opinion?
So in my opinion, the top 3 reasons why a company or a product ever fails is very similar to the adage in real estate. In real estate, it's location, location, location. For companies and startups and products, it's all about people, people, and people. And it ultimately comes down to the team and the people who are actually building the product in terms of, do they have the right culture and the right team dynamics amongst them in order to actually be able to get the product out quickly.
Let me follow up with you, and Rahim, we'll get you in a minute. So does that mean for somebody sitting in the audience that's in a company or with a group that doesn't get it, that you should quit and go to a place that does, or start your own thing with people that get it?
I'm always encouraging people to do startups on their own.
Interesting. Rahim, thoughts? Not about the quitting piece, but what's stopping from companies? I had to ask the question, right? Hard questions. Cue them up.
I think a lot of folks say that they've had very that I talk to say they've had bad experiences listening to customers. And so what I mean by this is, the first thing is in reaching out and talking to customers is understanding, is there a problem that's even worth solving? Yeah. And when people sort of check that box, then they move on to the next one, which is trying to understand from the customer, how do they actually go ahead and solve that problem? And I think one of the greatest lessons I've taken over the last couple of years is that when the customer tells you what they actually need, you need to listen to them and understand, is that even a problem that you want to be solving? And so, in our case, we just kept on going to different segments of customers until we found one that had the problem and had the type of problem that we were interested in solving, and then continued to repeat that process.
Follow-up question. Often engineers have their fingers on the code, and so they ultimately control what gets shipped. Engineers are a special breed. That's why they're engineers. Have you and others run into issues with helping the engineers understand the end users, and how do you deal with that? I mean, is this a common problem? Right? Am I making this up now? Okay. How do you deal with it?
So the short one is we make every one of our engineers for 2 weeks a year spend time in the field with customers.
Other thoughts? Interesting.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Cristina.
On that, we have weekly user testing. So we have users coming into our office in testing, and then we also go out to cafes
and the engineers are
and
part
test.
of that?
Yeah, and the engineers are the ones doing it. So we have people on each team. If you're responsible for the reading view on Pulse, then there's one DRI, directly responsible individual for that particular feature, and that person is supposed to go out and do all of that testing, and that person's always an engineer.
Manu?
Having engineers actually respond to customer support issues is a great way of making them empathetic with the product.
Vinay, your thought on the engineering issue?
Yeah, as everybody said, accountability of what you're doing. I think everybody who builds something has to be the responsible one for testing it and learning from it. So you talked about earlier, just admitting to making a mistake and improving that has to be something that whoever writes the code takes accountability for it.
Okay. Cristina, what's stopping companies from launching fast and learning and iterating and learning?
I think for large companies, when I talk to friends who work at really large companies that are having trouble making quick movements into new spaces, they constantly tell me how they have a lot of middle managers who don't seem to be doing anything other than having meetings. So their whole day is like, oh, we'll have a one-on-one with this person and this person and this person, and at the end of the day, nothing really got done. And I think you compare that to another company like Apple, where you either have people who sell something or build something, and if you're not one of those people, you don't really fit in.
Great. Vinay, what's stopping people?
I think a lot of it has to do with ego. So one thing I heard a while ago was that the more complex the problem, the more simple the solution is. And I think that we tend to, those who are kind of professional product people, tend to overcomplicate things. And we tend to have too much ego attached to, my problem is really difficult, my problem is going to change the world, my problem is super hard, nobody succeeded, and so therefore my solution is to think really hard, to think really long, and to build something really complex. And the opposite is often true when it comes to succeeding at it. So I think when you can get the person through that mental barrier around understanding that simplicity is the key to the solution, you can get past that, and just getting people to buy to that is really important.
Great, thanks. Question in the audience.
Yeah, hi. I really took to heart your comment about the on-ramp situation. And one of the things we've had a challenge is, although we spend a lot of time connected with our users and doing fast iterations and getting feedback, we have this other side of the application, the admin side, that is the unsexy side. And so I'm wondering how you've incorporated this idea of feedback and rapid iterations with that side of your application that maybe the administrators use or the help desk uses that isn't the sexy side to be working on.
Who can connect with that?
Yeah, I can tell you very concretely what we did was try to figure out how can we insert ourselves into the workflow of the administrator. And so, for a lot of our admins, they didn't want to use, in our case, a new social media dashboard to manage, their Facebook comments when they were getting emails coming in thousands of emails coming in from all the various other marketing channels they had to develop, and that's where they were spending all of their time. And so rather than pushing them to our dashboard at the beginning, we just started to send them notifications into their email. And that started to get Involver incorporated into the workflow. And once it got incorporated into the workflow, we became fairly sticky, and that on-ramp into the system got created.
Other responses to that? Question over here. I saw somebody with the mic. Right
Hi.
there, and then in the back. Why don't you get a mic up to the back there? Yes.
Hi, can we talk about negative user feedback for a second? And especially, Cristina, your slide on the 4 bubbles of the people that had given negative user feedback on a feature. How, as a product team, how do you separate sometimes this sort of tyranny of the negatives, where you get a couple of negatives, and it's tempting to think that that is representative of your whole user base, when in fact it may just be a couple of very loud people? Take us inside that product meeting for a second, that wrestling match, if you could.
How many people have experienced that? Is that a relevant question? Yeah, great question. Thoughts?
I think Facebook has this problem all the time. They make one change that they've tested with a bunch of users before, and then there's this mutiny that ensues with people creating these Facebook pages with 1 million followers saying, turn it back. And I think there's a place where you do have to listen to your users. In this case, when we looked at it, we really agreed it was disrupting the user flow and it wasn't intuitive. And I think sometimes they make you realize what you didn't see before. And in that case, that's when you kind of listen to them. And those were pieces of like a 100 person thread on Get Satisfaction of people saying, I hate this, I hate this. So in that case, for us, we made the change. I think in other cases, when you're trying to break new ground and get your users to do something completely different, they may hate it. But I think the only thing that you can do is to test that with some of your users beforehand, some of those hardcore users included, and then see what their reactions are and see if they adapt. And then that mutiny may be worth it.
Yeah. Manu?
So a couple of comments on this. One, that I actually believe that if you're trying to do true innovation, listening to your users may not always be the right choice. And sometimes you have to actually have to go purely on inspiration and gut, and then be able to actually put something out there and then see what the reaction actually ends up being. And if that wasn't the case, we would all still be using laptops and desktops which still had floppy drives and CD-ROMs and spinning disks and VGA ports and extra keys on the keyboard that nobody knows what they want to do, right? And it takes somebody like an Apple who can actually have the guts to actually say, okay, we're going to get rid of this thing and actually cut features. And cutting features is really, really hard. And that's something that companies actually and companies need to do for their products in order to actually get the right focus.
Let me do a follow-on on that, and Vinay, you can pop back to this question if you have a burning answer for it. Do you think it's true, yes, no answer, that a company's success, a new venture, a new product, new service within a larger company is directly proportional to the team's ability to cut features?
Not wholly.
Okay, Rahim?
Yes.
Cristina?
Yes.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Okay, so we have 3.5, maybe. Think about it. It might be, it might not be. You want to pop back to the next
yeah,
question?
it's something about the user feedback. I think one thing to say is that trust the numbers, because the numbers tell you whether what's really happening versus the vocal minority who gets interested in feedback. The other thing to do is to really read between the lines on the feedback. So in our case, we actually have a neuropsychologist who spends time with our members, because the emotional attachment to our product is very strong. So she'll survey members and talk to them on the phone and spend a lot of time. And when you get into the details of why somebody said they didn't like something, it's often not because they didn't like the color, where it was, even the feature. There's some deeper dissatisfaction with some experience where you can solve a lot quicker and a lot more effectively by dealing with the core root problem. And so I think the important thing is just follow up with those members who say, we don't like this. Try to really get to the bottom of what they're trying to say, because it's really easy to throw that feedback over the wall and forget about it from their point of view. So you have to ask questions.
My touch point on this, which I repeat over and over these days, is help people do what they already want to do. And if they're not using your product, your service, you're clearly not helping them do what they already want to do, and you need to reposition it so you are. I can think of almost nothing that has won that is making people do what they don't want to do. It's always help people do what they want to do, and you create the best product or solution for that. There was a question in the back.
So my question is, and this may be specific to the nonprofit space, which is where I'm coming from, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on how do you balance the tension between the need to launch quickly, iterate quickly, possibly fail and learn from that failure so you can do it all over again with limited resources in terms of time, capacity, people?
Let me add something to that as well. You guys I know you're all capable of handling like a multi-headed question. How do you do that in the face of limited resources? And how do you do it in the face of a brand that you do not want to damage? And for many nonprofits and other organizations, the real thing you have is brand.
You know, the limited resource is actually an asset for you because it's going to make you decide what you want to do and make it really simple, which in the end is good. So, you know, anybody who starts a development effort with 5 guys and a lot of time is probably going to build something that doesn't work. So if you have one guy with half the time who still wants to be successful, you're going to make tough choices and you're going to strip things out. With respect to the brand, I think it's really important just to be transparent about it. Tell people you're trying stuff out. And I think when members see that you're honest about wanting to learn from them, as we've heard before, they're going to forgive you a few times when you fail.
Other answers?
Yeah, I think Vinay hit it on the head with respect to changing the story with the customer. You know, Domino's found themselves in this position unexpectedly several years ago with that whole debacle with, you know, the videos getting posted on YouTube about what was happening in some stores in I think it was the Midwest or what have you, and the CEO used that crisis of a few bad employees to change the story with the customer around sort of really listening to them and involving them, and most importantly, saying that it was okay if Domino's failed, and they started posting comments, reviews. Once people received their pizza on Twitter and then also in Times Square, yeah. and it's completely changed. How Domino's interacts and improves the quality of its product over time.
Before we go on, how many are associated with the company of venture where your brand really you think is your major asset? So maybe 25, 30%, yeah, and there's a lot of fear around that. And I hear that a lot. Should we go to a new question? Question back here.
All right, so I appreciate what you were saying around reducing features and reworking code. And my question was, when you have a really packed pipeline and you're talking about also co-development ventures, how do you factor in when you release something, whether you want to go back and rework it, knowing that it might displace something else you want to build, or do you make conscious decisions about holding a percentage of your pipeline in order to be able to rework? It sounds like it's, you know, a very important part of your strategy, and I'm just interested about how you balance those competing things.
Who wants to take that?
Thank you.
Vinay.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to have your priorities straight. So I'll give you an example that Rahim talked about, is that often you'll think about, you know, there's this really great feature that we want to do, some customers asking for it, it's awesome, but if your onboarding doesn't work, then it doesn't really matter. So I think it's important to kind of lay it out, do this with Post-it notes. I learned this from BJ. Just put a bunch of Post-it notes on the ground and say, this is the order in which people will experience our technology. And if we don't solve number 1, then all this other stuff later on is pointless. So you can build all that stuff and have it top heavy, but you got to deal with the basic thing. And hopefully your customers will understand that when you explain it to them that way, that it's important to get the things in order.
If you release something, the likelihood is that you know, there will be some iteration involved that you'll need to do, and you may be doing that right away, right after you release it, and make room for that in your product pipeline, or you may end up waiting to do that because you have something else that's more urgent. But regardless, you're going to end up needing to fix that. So it will happen, you know, a month from now, or it'll happen a year from now. But everything where we knew there was a problem, we eventually had to fix it. So you'll have to make room regardless.
Great.
So I have yet to ever come across an engineer who thinks that their product or what they've built is perfect. There is always room for improvement. And it's the job of basically the product person or the CEO, as the case may be, to actually pick what's the right point to actually ship the product. But going back to your question about when is the right time to actually rebuild something, it really depends on what the piece is. If it's a foundation piece, you want to make sure you're on a strong foundation, because otherwise it's going to cost you a whole lot more and take more time to do it in the future than it would early on.
Okay. Do we have a quick question here?
Yeah, I guess my question is mostly for Manu. You're talking a lot about rebuilding, and so, but does a company that needs to reinvent itself over and over and over, as a venture capitalist, doesn't that make you nervous?
So great question, because I constantly rail against the word pivot. And in fact, if you notice in my presentation, I carefully, I didn't touch on failure at all. I only talked about success, and I talked about iterating. And to me, every time I hear the word pivot, I hear the toilet flushing in the back of my head. Okay, because all that means is basically you just took a bunch of time and a bunch of money and wasted it, right? And that's why I cannot emphasize enough the amount of the importance of analyzing and designing and actually thinking before leaping. And so in all the companies that I'm working with, that's one of the key things that we try and do, is that we don't want to ever end up in a situation where we're just completely throwing away the existing product and going in a radically different direction, right? It always has to be incremental changes that get you to the right direction. So.
Great. Speakers, after we're done, will you stay here during the break so people come up and talk to you? Please thank the speakers for me, everybody. Awesome, awesome. I know a lot of you traveled, you took time off work, you got busy, crazy schedules, and you're not necessarily part of the health community, which is one of the reasons I brought you here, to get this outside perspective and new voices. You touch on health some, but it's kind of indirect, so very good. We're going to take a break, and we're right on time, actually. I've got 30 seconds to explain what we're doing during break. This is optional, but hopefully you'll play along. On your table, you have some cards. I want you, without looking, pick a card. If you've already picked a card, put it back and pick one without looking, so you get a card you haven't chosen. This is in preparation for the next session, which is baby steps in collaboration. You know where I'm going with this? I'm going to have you do a little collaboration, maybe game, funness. You don't have to. But what I want you to do is find other people and make the best poker hand you can coming back in. So when you return, we're going to see who has the best poker hand. You can't take more than one card out. It's optional, but I think it's a way to get you to mix and match. We will see you back here right exactly for the raffle at 4:39. Thanks, everybody.
Just can't get enough. Boy, I think about it.